stay on, or that I
Hello.
on stage or walk up to?
So this is just about a 5-minute warning before we get things started. So we're going to ask you if you want to grab a drink, grab a drink. Please take a seat up front so the cameras can see you. I'm letting you know that I'm going to turn on the audio into the virtual space right now. So the physical room can hear Frame VR. Frame VR can hear us.
Hello, Chicago.
All right, and this is mostly because we are about to start the stream right now. And this is our way of testing the audio and the delay into the stream. So I'm just going to keep talking and watching Tom to make sure that we're doing okay. But how's Peter in there?
He's great.
Doing well.
Yep. Sorry, he can speak for himself.
You guys should just put yourselves on camera and stay on camera the whole time at this point.
We will do that. Pick a screen, Peter.
What's that?
Any screen. Sorry,
Caroline, can you keep talking a little bit? You seem pretty quiet.
Sure. Trying to speak loudly enough. Is that good? Or should I take
Just
away
keep talking.
All right, I'll keep talking. Hopefully this will work. I'm going to put myself on video. Hey, everybody from Chicago.
All right, we're good. Thank you.
Hello.
Is that Peter? Hey, there's Peter.
That's me.
Peter. Nice.
Now I have to find my document. There it is. All right, so we'll officially get started in like 2 minutes. So this is the point where I'm going to ask everybody like Jay, who's talking in the back of the room, to come in and take a seat. I love doing that. It's fun to call people out by name. All right, a few more moments.
And
Again, most of this is so that we can get things coordinated and set up for the stream. How you doing, Caroline?
Oh, I just wanted to answer Peter's question. And yes, Peter, when you are speaking up here, you can come up to the stage and turn around and we can be looking right out to the audience. So that's the right place. And I'll let you know when we're ready for that.
Is it more dramatic to wait and then walk up?
It is always more dramatic to walk up. Absolutely.
Okay.
We need music for that, don't we? Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, that's the next thing we'll do is we'll add some walk-up music and some bumper music.
There you go. Love it. Love it.
That's not
We'll
happening.
choose from our Spotify list.
Oh, I'm just discovering the numbers here, and I can clap and wave.
Oh yeah, you can dance. Yeah, there's all kinds of things to do.
All right, so I am watching the clock because we got about 1 more minute, and I know that we're going to have someone from 1871 actually coming in to do to intro 1871 today. I want to make sure that she makes it in the room before I start. And there she is. Yay, look at that. Olivia, thank you. That's okay. We'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so like I said, we got about 1 more minute until we get started officially. And then we'll get going. I'm good. You good? All right. Cool. So welcome, everybody, to the next evolution.
Woo-woo!
Tonight, we are here to talk about the transportation, distribution, and logistics industry. These are our presenters who will be here for the evening. For those of you who have not been here before or don't know me, my name is Matt Wren. I am the founder of VRAR Chicago and The Next Evolution. My passions and expertise span a whole lot of emerging technologies in addition to augmented and virtual reality. And that's all I'm going to say about myself. If you would like to know more about me, feel free to just come up and talk to me after the event. But with that said, for those of you who have not been here before, actually show of hands, who's never been here before? We got some new people. Excellent. I see hands raising in the virtual space too. Cool. The Next Evolution is now, always has been, and always will be 100% free to attend. With that said, it is not free to produce. So I'll leave this QR code up for about 5 seconds for anybody who wants to consider actually donating to support the event. Because we do like to keep it going, and there's a lot of things that we want to do to actually make this better. Maybe if we got enough of the donations, we could have bumper and walk-up music. That'd be really cool. But with that said, that'll come up again later. We are also partnered with Augmented World Expo. So the Next Evolution is also AWE Nite Chicago. There are 30 AWE nights all over the world. If you'd like, you can scan this QR code or use that discount code to get a 20% discount off of a 3-day pass to Augmented World Expo, USA 2025. I see somebody actually taking a picture of it, so I'll hold it up there for another second. I'll also bring up the fact that this deck will be available forever. But with that said, you can attend live online courses for AWE Academy. There's 3 AWE events that take place around the world. AWE USA, which will be in June in Long Beach, AWE Asia in Singapore, and AWE EU in Vienna. You can also attend live online courses for AWE Academy, or basically just check everything else out about at awexr.com. But with that said, I would also like to take a moment to thank our venue sponsor. And since we have somebody from the venue here to actually introduce this space, in case you've never been here before. So once again, show of hands, who's never been in this space before? Come on up.
I'm raising my hand, Matt.
Thanks,
Hi,
Caroline.
I'm Olivia Thompson. I'm the events manager at 1871. So for everyone's first time here, welcome. 1871, we're an innovation hub, a tech incubator. And what's unique about us is that we work with the full maturity curve of founders and entrepreneurs. So it could be just an idea for a business all the way to growth and corporate stages as well. We give a lot of resources to our members through programming, mentorship, and events, which I work in. So we have a bunch of free events that happen all the time. So if you go to our website, 1871.com, you can see those, you can mingle and connect with other entrepreneurs or anyone in the tech space. We have our FinTech Summit coming in January. So if that is any interest to you, check it out. Yeah, love having you guys here.
Thank you. And so obviously we were here this month, last month. So we kind of host this event in 2 physical locations. 1871 is one of our venue sponsors. Our other one is 2112, which is Chicago's creative technologies incubator. That is up on the north side of Chicago on Knox Avenue. But with that, we are, as I mentioned, hosting this in multiple places at the same time. So I'm going to hand it over to our virtual host, Caroline Dennis, to introduce herself and the virtual venue.
All right, everybody. Thank you, Matt. My name is Caroline Dennis, and I run a practice called 2 Degrees. And I work at the intersection of immersive technology and Web3. My passion is data sovereignty, dignity preserving technologies, health equity, and social well-being that drives my work with global communities celebrating the power and fusion of people, tech, and science for planet health. That's a mouthful, but in addition to hosting here now for almost 2 years, it's crazy. I also am part of a leadership team for XR Women, which I'll talk about in a minute, and a group called Symphony, which is a global incubator building inclusive, sustainable, smart cities. So XR Women is a collaborator and partner of VR Air Chicago. So we're a group of about almost 1,000 women from 60 countries, and we're passionate about building industry leaders and making accessibility and inclusivity for all of the work in the XR space so that women can take their place. And we've met for 4 years now, and we've actually held over 200 immersive events. We're about to celebrate our 4th birthday for an in-person event in Sarasota, Florida, where we're going to have a hackathon with a university there. But if you're wondering about us or you're curious about it, we're open to any and all. So happy to be here about that. So this virtual space that you're in is actually, I'm going to be with the virtual panelist, Peter Wittig, and we will be communicating across lines into the in-person space. And that means that you can access it from your laptop or your headset or your cell phone. And we have some ways that people can communicate both in our chat as well as just unmuting and asking questions. So I'd like to turn it back over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Caroline. We do also have a number of community sponsors that we have to recognize, which I'll go through really quickly. So Caroline just mentioned 2 Degrees IO, Venity, who was helping us with our NFT tags that we were doing earlier last year and earlier this year, IG Independent Game Developers Association of Chicago, Envision, and Patched Reality. We also have to thank our 2 beverage sponsors, so Revolution Brewing and System. So I can see some of you have some in your hands. We like the fact that they provide that for us free of charge. But with that said, we are here to talk about the industry this evening, immersive technology in transportation, distribution, and logistics. And so I'm actually going to hand it back over to Caroline to introduce the topic and the industry.
Thank you, Matt. So immersive technology is reshaping how professionals train, operate, and plan within transportation, distribution, and logistics by enhancing safety, improving efficiency, and enabling better decision-making. In warehouses, AR headsets guide workers with real-time instructions, improving order accuracy and reducing errors. Drivers can train in VR environments that simulate real-world challenges, helping them navigate complex routes and handle emergencies. Logistics companies use AR and VR to optimize transportation planning and streamline supply chains, allowing teams to collaborate remotely and make data-driven decisions faster. For planners, immersive tools offer unique visualization capabilities. AR overlays allow community members to explore proposed changes like bike lane designs or infrastructure updates in a tangible way. VR enables decision makers to step in fully immersive 3D environments, allowing them to experience projects from every single angle before implementation. As adoption grows, these innovations promise to make transportation systems safer, smarter, and more adaptable to a rapidly changing world. So first, I would like to introduce Peter Wittig. Happy to have you tonight, Peter. If you want to bring your avatar on up to the stage and stand
Sure.
right here next to me.
There we go. All right.
Awesome. So Peter Wittig is one of the co-founders of Motive.io. Using Motive's platform, he helps enterprises launch and scale their XR training initiatives. So happy to have you here, and we will have a chance to ask Peter questions after our presenters present. So yeah, take it away, Peter.
Thank you, Caroline, and thanks, Matt, for having me here tonight. I believe someone is running the slides for me, or am I running the slides?
That's correct. And if you move in your mouse, you should be able to twist your mouse so that you can actually see the screen over to your
there we go.
Right.
Perfect.
Awesome.
All right. So that's me. I work for Motive.io. We're based in Vancouver, Canada. I'm from Milwaukee, so it's nice to be talking to some folks near Lake Michigan. So that's I'm enjoying that, as well as people from wherever else you're coming from. So next slide would be great. So we make an enterprise training platform called the Motive XMS. We focus on a few different areas. So one is the ability to take XR training. Maybe we built it, maybe somebody else built it, doesn't really matter, and make it accessible to your learners all in one spot. We want to make sure that when people go through that training, the data then flows to somewhere where you can get valuable insights from it, and even into systems that you may be using for other forms of training, like an LMS that you've got for online training or video training. So all that data can just flow. That's the enterprise ready part of the platform. We find that I would say that there's 1,000 companies who can make fantastic VR training content. There's a handful who can pass an IT sec review at a Fortune 500 company. And so the ability to take things that other people have made or things that we have been made and make it available in these large companies has been a big point of emphasis for us. We could do both hard skills and soft skills training, and we have a unique solution for making updates quickly as people are going through. And we've got a number of people who are using this platform. And if you click to the next slide, please. Some of these, as you can see, are in transportation, logistics, and distribution. Others are in other areas. But what we have found is that if you're using XR training to solve a set of problems, it does very well. And that set of problems exists in multiple industries. I would think of it like a spreadsheet. No one says, I need spreadsheet for Wall Street, or I need the spreadsheet that's only for, energy. Everyone says, no, I need a spreadsheet and it's going to work fine because I use it on these specific problems. I find XR training is much the same. The real thing to nail is making sure that you can comply with the security measures that these companies require and make sure that the data can flow into systems that they're already using if they so choose. If you could start the video, actually, maybe. I think my last slide is contact info. So if you jump into the video, that'd be great. So I'm going to emphasize three particular points. We do lots of things, but I'm going to talk about three things. One is using intelligent agents inside of XR training. I'll talk a bit about that and how you can do it with our tool. Another is making sure that the data of training sessions gets into LMSs that you're already using. And finally, the ability to make quick changes to content. So I'll start with intelligent agents inside of VR training. This is something that we built because a client of ours needed it, much like everything we built. We were frankly surprised at how well it worked. So we normally build XR training simulations and do that in a wide variety of industries. But what they wanted was the ability to ask an agent questions as people were going through the training. And so we built a system that allows you to upload, say, PDFs, documents, spreadsheets, whatever you've got about your training procedure. Maybe it's the machines that are involved in it. And then you have this intelligent agent that uses Gen AI. You can just ask questions, and they use that source material for the basis of their answers. So they're not making things up. They're answering questions about the procedure based on the information you've provided. But they can understand almost any answer because of that generative AI component. It's been great. So what you're seeing here is Launchpad, and this is a way for a user to sign in into an app on a headset, and then all of their training is in one spot. So it could be multiple apps from multiple vendors, doesn't really matter. But when they finish their training, we capture all of this data, XAPI, SCORM, custom learning objectives, whatever you want, different choices they're making, score progressions, that's fine. If you're using a third-party LMS and you say, I've got all my training data there, you can just hook our platform right into there. Go into this tool, Launchpad, get a code from your LMS, finish that training procedure, and all the data is going to wind up immediately back in the system you're using for all your other training, managing your users, all right there. So this is a third part, and this is about the content updates. The way most people build VR training, they make it like a music box. So if you ever want to change the tune, you have to send it back to the person who built the machine. But we take a different approach. You can build any 3D environment, whatever you want. It could be this fire engine. It could be an open pit mine. It could be an office where you're having a conversation, a hospital. Doesn't matter. You build that, and then you can hook it to a web-based drag and drop authoring tool. And the real advantage of this is it lets people who are used to building training use a tool they can use to put the training content into the custom scenario. So Unity developers, Unreal developers are often not trainers. Trainers are often not Unity or Unreal developers. If you find one of those magical people, hold on to them. But what we said is they each deserve their own tool. And so you can make these content updates and changes once you've got that custom scene built, even after you've deployed it. Now, one of our customers, and that was listed on the page before, they're saving multiple millions of dollars a year with some of the training that they're doing. And the ability to make content faster becomes very important when they realize how much money they can be saving. And they found that with our tools, they can make it up to 66% faster than what they were doing before. So I suppose a few things is we're ready for enterprise. If you need us pass an IT sec review, we can do that. We've got the ability to take training from other third-party vendors, make it available through this platform. We can integrate with systems you've already got, SSO, if you want to use that. And then we have this unique tool to make content faster and to separate the flow of creating the scenes and creating the training that happens inside of them. Very interested to hear from our other panelists today and all of your questions as we go. So thanks very much.
Awesome. All right. Well, I want to turn it over back to you, Matt.
Thank you, Caroline. All right, and with that, I'm going to ask Charlie Johnson to come on up to the stage. So Charlie helps companies ship their high-value, time-sensitive products and materials from start to finish. And with that, I'm going to let him talk about himself from there. Flipped up.
Can you hear me now?
Okay.
All right, so thank you. My name is Charles Johnson. Most people in the industry call me CJ. I've been in the industry for over 30 years. I am an entrepreneur in the logistics space. I currently own 5 companies, trucking, brokerage, warehousing and distribution, and a TMS system. So I'm very excited about being here to talk to you guys tonight and to talk about my industry that I love. Currently, my main role is I travel the country and I attend conferences. Last year in 2023, I went to 30 conventions and conferences around the country. This year I had 23 domestically. I'm looking forward to my conference this February in Dubai. It's a food conference, so I'm pretty excited about that one. But yes, I've been in the industry for many years, and I started my first at 24 years old. That is FlowTrans, which has been around since 2000. And I just brought a little video to talk first about that, and then I'll get into it more. So let's play the video.
As customers' needs change rapidly, they are looking for a trucking and logistics partner they can trust. After serving customers for more than 20 years, FlowTrans understands that when companies work with us, we become an integral part of their business. That partnership and commitment has been part of our DNA since day one. And that will never change. As the world around us evolves, we'll evolve with the changing needs of the market, keeping our core values intact. Our core values are what help us bring the best talent to our family-owned business and keep them engaged in our work and mission. Provide a superior customer experience. Pursue excellence in every way, including sustainability and technology. We're a family-owned business, and that's reflected in our values and how we interact with each other, our customers, and everyone around us. Respect, honesty, and trust leads to powerful bonds and the knowledge that we're always going to do everything in our power to help our customers grow and succeed. We work to provide opportunities for our team members to continuously improve through things like our Leadership Academy. And we've built a great experience for customers, finding ways to elevate our relationship and deepen our partnerships for more effective results. In sustainability, we've been on a mission knowing we have a role to play in making the world greener for everyone. From environmentally efficient vehicles to avoiding single-use plastics and going paperless, we are working toward a better future for all. The work we've done has been recognized externally, and we're proud of that. But more than anything, we're proud of the core values that keep our people and our customers coming back for more than 20 years. Find out more about us and what we can do for you.
So like I said, I've been in the industry for many years. I've known Matt for even longer than that, 30 plus years. And I'm looking forward really for learning more about the VR environment. One thing about our industry I felt prior to COVID was probably something our whole industry was not behind on the times on, but not as good as we should have been. And since COVID, the last 4 years, we've really supersized ourselves. We've really took on technology. Stuff that we're doing now on the AI side is really, really cool. And stuff just with everything across the board. So I think the VR is going to be huge with what Matt's doing and the team, and just being able to train the employees at the warehouses and doing some things on the trucks as well. It's going to be some cool stuff for the future, and I'm excited to see where they're going with it. So thank you, Matt.
All right, thank you, Charlie. And I was going to say, if you want to just grab a seat and hang out here, because we're going to go into the Q&A, and let me explain how the Q&A works. And Andrew, excellent, cool. So how Q&A works, because we do have this happening in multiple venues at the same time. So Caroline will let me know if there is a question in the virtual space. If there is, they will unmute themselves, ask their question. They can ask either of Peter or of Charlie, or frankly, just ask in general. Tom is over there. He's going to be monitoring the live stream, so there could be questions that come in over the chat. If they do, Tom will raise his hand. He'll open up a microphone and come in that way. Other than that, Andrew is walking around here with the microphone, so if you have a question in the physical space here, just raise your hand and the microphone. Ultimately, try to keep it up at least until I can notice that you've had your hand up, and I'll try and direct Andrew to you. But with that said, does anyone want to be the brave one who actually asked the first question? If not, I know Caroline has one. Ben is already up.
All right. For Charles, I know you mentioned how the VR, or you're starting to use the VR in your company and everything. Are you using more for virtual reality for training in some of the logistics, like if you're behind the wheel, or more showing augmented reality, how especially logistically and everything, how like the trucks and everything might need to move or maneuver depending on where it is they're traveling to?
Yeah, so currently we're looking at the VR. We don't currently use that space, but our intention is to use it more on the warehousing side for teaching and education. I think that's where we see the best benefit in the short term.
You want to chime in on that at all, Peter, on what you've seen?
I think what CJ said makes a lot of sense. I think using it in that context is a great use for it.
All right, Caroline, do you want to ask your question? I know you had one.
I can just.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The other thing I want to say is I think there's so many different ways as you start to use what I've seen so far. I think there's going to be more ideas that are going to come to it once the employees and the team come together and start utilizing, like, oh, what about this? What about this? And that seems to be the typical thing with technology that I've noticed, and I'm not the tech as many in the room are, guru, let's say, but you go down one road and next thing you know, you have another road. It started with my TMS, actually. It was literally a platform for customers to basically track and trace shipments, and then it ended up becoming basically a TMS system. So that's, as many of you know, probably in many other spaces that happens. So I think there's many different things that we don't even know yet with the VR and the augmented. So
excellent.
Future trans?
No, what is TMS?
Oh, a transportation management system. I'm sorry. So basically, it's for transportation companies. It's basically your software.
Caroline, did you want to ask your question?
I do. Mine is for Peter. And Peter, I know that for many of us who might be in the space of needing to worry about security compliance, and you mentioned the IT sec review, and I know that in that space, it's very diverse, all right? Security reviews include a whole bunch of different things. So can you speak to that a little bit and explain a little bit more about, is that industry regulatory specific? Is it SOC, for those who have SOC compliance, Security Operations Center compliance? Can you just speak a little bit more about that?
Sure. I think, you can certainly have baselines, which are important. I think SOC 2 compliance is kind of table stakes for a lot of the companies that we work with. If you get into healthcare, certain ones can, say HIPAA could be quite important there. If you're working with, defense industry, they'll be looking for something like FedRAMP. But I think, getting these things is important. Being able to pass them when you need to, but a lot of it is nothing to do with VR and AR at all. It's simply saying, how have these companies been operating for many years? And they say, well, can we have control over where the data is and you not have it? Sure, that's fine. Do you have a way for us to host it in a place that we decide, not where you decide? And it's fine. And so I think that takes time to put that effort in. But I find that a lot of those, as you say, have already been defined for things other than AR or VR. And if you can follow those guidelines, you're in good shape.
Okay. And then on that same front, in terms of the hosting, so if someone else develops training content and they utilize your platform. And what you're saying is that they don't necessarily have to host it on your platform. Is that right?
Sure. So we're not an MDM, and so we don't keep track
And
of
why
the
don't you
application.
elaborate on the MDM just for those in the audience who might not know?
Sure.
that?
Sorry about that. So it's a mobile device management system, and so maybe you're working for a company and they've given you a computer or they've given you a phone. There's a piece of software on there that lets the company manage that. So maybe you forget it on the bus, and they say, "Oh, there's company information on there," and they can wipe it, or they can say, "Well, now we're going to lock it down so no one can get in." And headsets are the same. At the end of the day, a headset is an Android device, same as the Android phones that you're walking around with in terms of managing them. And so with an MDM, and this is not what we do, you can decide to put an app on that or not. That's not something we do. So we work with many of the other providers who help folks manage their fleet of headsets for VR, and they decide which applications to put on them. Where the security compliance really comes into play is they've usually folks have run a pilot project and they said, "Hey, this works really well," and then they realize we'd like to scale this out and have a bunch more people go through it, only to find out that IT steps in and says, "Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do that? Can you do that?" And the answer is often no. And so what was a very successful proof of concept or pilot project winds up going no further in those situations. So what we can do, and it's usually about where the data goes, to say, well, I need to know that John and Mary got these results and that I've tracked it here. And by saying, well, we have a system by which you can launch that training, that data will be collected by a system that you can vet and say it does fall in line with our security compliance, and then can be sent back into a repository that maybe you're using for all sorts of other training, and know that then you can get advantage of or take advantage of that pilot that went so well by putting this piece in between your systems and that particular application. And that's been a really successful thing for us. And it's good for the vendor who made that. It's good for the end client who is now going to get a lot more value because people are getting better training. And it's good for us because we're helping them do that.
Okay, great. Thanks. Back to you,
You
Matt.
bet. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Charlie to kind of jump in on that. So Peter had talked about one of the what I'll say barriers to adoption, which is basically getting it past IT for like a large enterprise company. From the industry perspective, as somebody who's running transportation companies, distribution companies, what are the other barriers? Like getting your workforce to buy into it, getting the different sites distributed. Some of you might not. I don't know how robust is IT at your companies that you actually have IT to sort of manage a rollout of something like this.
Yeah, I think everybody currently in the state this past year or two has been on a lean environment. So I do think it's having the hands on deck to be able to train outside of your normal scope. So I think IT can definitely be involved in it. I don't think there's so much a barrier at times, but I could see it. I think it's having those managers and those other people buying in. People are scared of technology, right? I can picture my parents right now and what do you mean? I got to use my iPhone? What is this thing? I'm doing. Yes, the kids are getting more and more comfortable with it, younger generations, but you still have people that are working in the warehouses that are a little older generation, and they're not always buying in on that kind of stuff. They like to drive their forklift and do the things their ways. So, but I do feel like you have to start somewhere, and if you get the younger workers buying into it, I think the rest will follow in time.
Excellent. I'm looking for, okay, we got a question in the front row here.
Yeah, I've got two questions. First for CJ. Based on what you know, of the technology related to AR and VR, what would you postulate is the largest surface area for solutions? Like, what is the largest opportunity with the largest impact to justify an investment, or where you see a return on that investment?
Where I think it's going to need to be started with, I would start with the steamship lines and the railroads. They typically have the backing from many years in the business, I would start in those industries first. I think that the VR environment, whether it be a railroad crossing and teaching the person who's checking each of the cars going by in that environment, making sure that they're actually doing everything they need to do, or the steamship lines and things like that with the boats that are coming across. I think that's a big portion of the industry. The trucking is the next one, I would say, with the larger carriers. The smaller guys are going to have a problem with it. It's going to be the carriers that have 100 trucks or more that are going to be typically behind investing into that. But I would say the railroads and the steamship lines would be the two areas that I would focus on to attack, because they have extra, I think, money, and they're going to want to invest in that technology, and they have recently.
Is that like a lost time opportunity, or a risk exposure opportunity, or an efficiency opportunity?
I think it's all of the above. I definitely think the risk and exposure for sure. Because there's, you're talking about, when you're dealing with railroads, you're talking about, it's serious equipment, right? This isn't like, you drop a hammer on my foot. These are big pieces of equipment. There are accidents that do happen, and there are things that people need to be on top of their game. And I think that's where they're going to want it for sure, for that environment.
Okay. And Peter, the question for you is, as far as like the barrier of entry to content creation, like if you're doing training, you're using training for other providers, if it's traditional training, that's going to have to be transformed. Is there a barrier in terms of getting these enterprises to invest in the capabilities to produce AR and VR content in the first place?
There can be, it depends on the industry, and I would say even on a company by company basis. It's a good question, though. What I find really moves the needle each and every time is it is showing the value of it. It could be that there are certain industries where this is very widely used, and they'll realize that, hey, something's working really well with the folks that we compete with, and they'll realize, oh, it's that. There might be a case of somebody who worked at one of those companies who then goes to another one and say, why aren't we doing this here? But what I find is folks usually believe their own data the most. And so by setting up a small proof of concept or small pilot project and saying, let's find a specific procedure, and they can always help me do that. And there are certain ones that VR or AR is good for. Other ones I would say you should probably use something else for it. But let's focus on that, and let's pick a specific metric, and then let's have a control group. These folks are going to go through the training as they are now, and then we're going to have a group that goes with the VR component or AR component, and then we'll compare based on a pre-survey and a post-survey for both groups. And it's pretty amazing the results you'll get, or to say, well, if you pick the right procedure and you're looking at a metric, what you're going to see in terms of a boost with that new form of training. You can then quantify that and say, well, if we're seeing this much of a boost, let's say we did that with a few thousand people, what would be the impact in terms of reduced safety incidences, increased productivity, faster time to get folks who are new to the job on the job working, less time retraining folks that need to be retrained. So whatever metric you pick, you can find a dollar amount and associate it with that. And then I think that usually is the thing where someone says, oh, wait, we could be saving this much money. And then that's usually a pretty good way to do it. One example, we worked with it was the South Dakota School of Mines, and then it was by the Mine Safety Health Administration. It's like OSHA for mines. And they wanted to see how well it would do for knowledge retention of mine safety hazards. And so the control group versus the VR group for mine safety, the VR group remembered 30% of the content more than the control group immediately after the training. But 31 days later, the control group remembered 11% of what they were taught, and the VR group remembered 86% of what they were taught. And you think of the cost of a safety incident on a mine, not to mention the human tragedy or cost, but that can have a serious. The cost of better training is very small compared to the cost of an incident.
Sure.
Well, one other thing I was thinking about the industry, like you're talking about, I think there's there needs to be more marketing on it. That would just be my suggestion. When I saw this stuff earlier, I'm thinking video games, right? My kid's playing this cool thing and he's acting in the virtual world. Like I said, I go to a ton of conferences and conventions, and I'm thinking about right off the bat, Manifest, which is in Vegas in February. It's our technology, warehousing, distribution, huge conference, great conference. And I haven't seen anything like this there, right? No one's really selling the virtual reality. The IWA, which is our convention, which is the International Warehousing Association nationwide. You're talking the top warehouses in the country attend this conference. The people who are owning it, the people who are going to be investing are there, and yet not having something like this. So I think it's just the marketing that will get it out there, because I think there are people that want to invest and they do want to be more safer, and they do want to invest in their employees, especially with such a tight job market as has been the last few years. I think people will take those opportunities if it's presented to them. So I think that's something that we can all work on, I guess, in this industry. But yes, the marketing side.
Could I make one just point to that is I think you're exactly right. And if you could send me, sometimes I just don't know where these conferences are. And it's a learning thing. And so if I would be very interested if you could send me some of those. And then the other point I would say is, unlike most projects that, outside of this industry, these never go public. And because the companies see a value from using it, you sign an NDA right at the beginning. And then they say, well, that's never going away. And I think if all the NDAs disappeared tomorrow, the industry would explode next month. But what they often see is it's a competitive advantage, and they don't want their competitor to know what they're doing. And so I hear you on the marketing. I wish we could do more.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that and say some of the coolest things I get to do, unfortunately, I never get to talk about because they're all behind an NDA. But one thing, so there was another presenter that I had a conversation with. He couldn't be here tonight because he had a conflict, but this is from the railroad industry. And the conversation that we had, which I thought was really interesting because you both sort of touched on this topic, is the fact that, doing safety training in VR, there are certain things, when you're doing physical training, like actual physical training on the things, it's like, okay, don't put your arm there. Okay, why? Like, what's going to happen? And when you're doing that in VR, you can actually demonstrate the why. You can never really do that demonstration in the physical world, because you do it in the physical world, you lose your arm. But in VR, like, you can give that extra context around why you don't do certain things or why you have certain safety practices. Because, even when we had the conversation years ago about surgical, it's a safe place to fail. You can fail safely. You have an environment that allows you to make mistakes where you're not going to end up getting hurt or maimed or killed. And when it comes to really heavy things like trains or, containers being, moved by crane, again, that's another place where, hey, there's all these rules about don't do this, don't do that, or why do you do things a certain way? You can't really demonstrate the fail safe, but in VR you can. I think Caroline had a question, but I see another one in the room here. So go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, Matt, and also because I know OSHA was brought up and everything, because I know OSHA, because even as another fail-safe type thing that could be done in VR, kind of like, a fail-safe for if OSHA somehow, for whatever reason, gets involved, because I know it's just like, one thing after another where they will check everything and then like throw on fine after fine of like thousands of dollars at least.
You have a question?
So if anything, for the question would be, for some, would you consider doing some of the more of the stuff, especially with OSHA regulations and things like that, to kind of help train you so you can visually see what those are?
Actually, I'm going to throw this one to Peter. Actually, do you know if anyone's doing actual like OSHA 10, OSHA 30, or anything like that in VR yet?
There are companies who make OSHA training, kind of generic OSHA training. And I would recommend that for companies who are new to VR and want to give it a try. What I've found with off-the-shelf content is it gives people a flavor for what they're going to get. Most of the companies that I've worked with, where OSHA is something they need to keep in mind in that training, is they do OSHA training, but then they've got another 20% that they put on top of that that's specific to their organization. So I think the off-the-shelf content will give you a good feel for it. And if that goes well, then they'll say, well, now we want to do it our way, the way we would do it at our company. I don't know the name of a company offhand that does it, Matt, but I know there are companies who are building that stuff generic for that purpose.
And Charlie, is there, like, for the warehouse workers or for some of your transportation drivers or something, is there like, okay, you guys have to go through this standard training all the time, and then
Yeah, it's more not, I mean, OSHA is definitely involved in it, but it's more on the AIB SQF, which is certifications for food. We do a lot of food product. So it's more of those qualifications that we're doing training and recertification. And I was thinking while you were talking, like, how could we make that more? But it's a lot of paperwork and making sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. So I'm not sure it applies on that side of things. But again, you never know once you start going down the road.
Okay. Caroline, you had a question?
I do. Mine's a little bit of looking at the concept of having logistics companies that have to look at multiple different transportation modalities. And are there companies that can, and I'm thinking of something like FedEx or UPS, are there platforms that already can enable someone to watch a good being transferred from various different rail, trucking, and does that exist? That's my first question. And number two is there an application for VR in this case? And I know a lot of that is subjective, right? Because, I don't know whether it's better to have a headset on, but I'd be really interested because to me, there's a lot of movement of a good from different modalities of transportation. It seems to me it would lend itself to a platform. And would that, in your opinion, be useful to have immersive tech be used to track those things?
Yeah, on the transportation side, we have, I would call it more ELDs and macro point, which is we can track the container, the truck from, let's say, New Jersey to California. We can track that container coming from Shanghai, China to the port of New Jersey. We have those. It's not a virtual. It's more of just, I would call it maybe a ping on how do you want to tracking basically and stuff. So a GPS, correct. And but I was thinking about that as you were asking the question, and I was thinking about how my youngest, or my son, he played baseball growing up. I don't know if anybody has kids that played. There's a software called Game Changer, and it allowed you to watch it almost like how ESPN watches football games on your Gamecast. And but then it became, in the last few years, they actually added in where you can actually have someone videoing the game and actually then watch it like as if you're being at the event. I do think that could have some possibilities. I would probably need to take a little time to think about how the VR would play into that with the container. I would see it more on the shipper, the consignee's place, and you want to know you're delivering to the right place or the wrong place, or, hey, this place I'm going to deliver to, it has this specific, scenario. When you're coming to the merchandise mart for delivery, you can't just pull up a truck right on the on Michigan Avenue and deliver a semi here. It's just not going to happen. So you need to have specific instructions for those drivers to say, hey, we're going to go underneath the merchandise mart. We're coming on Lower Wacker. We're going to go up. We're going to go through the service elevator. We're going to take it to the 25th floor, and we have to need a 2-man crew, or we're going to need a dolly or whatever it is. I could see it being more in that regard, and that would probably provide some good knowledge to the industry for it, or good information.
Yeah. And I think something around digital twins that can allow a digital twin of the ecosystem of when it goes from place to place might be interesting. Peter, did you have any addition to that?
Well, I would agree with you on the digital twin side of things. I don't have as much domain knowledge there on what I would do if someone came to me and said, we're looking for ways to improve this process. I would ask, what are the problems you're having with the process? What are the biggest bottlenecks in the process? Is it the directions? Is it when you actually are unloading something? Is it when something's being moved from one point to another? And if one of those bottlenecks happen to be a specific procedure where we could say, okay, well, they need to be doing these things, but often something is missed. Then I said, well, let's look at that and say, well, what's the impact if this gets better? And if we do improve it, are you going to see a tangible benefit to it? Are people going to be safer? Are you going to get things there faster? Are things going to get damaged less? Are they going to are they going to make more money somehow or save some money somehow? And are people going to be able to be happier and safer doing their jobs? And if the answer is yes, I would say let's look at a way to train on that particular procedure. And if the answer is no, I would say I would just leave it and
Right.
let's find another
You
way.
focus on what people care about. You're right. And it makes me think, and Matt, I'm interested in your thoughts. It makes me think about the steps that people have been doing a lot of interesting things with mapping and AI and trying to anticipate traffic patterns and using AR to do that. So I also wonder about travel and being able to anticipate issues that they might anticipate during that travel, whether it be ocean travel, trucking travel, train travel. I think there's a lot of exciting possibilities there.
I mean, one of the things that sort of the, again, combination that you guys both just brought up, I'm just remembering years ago having to do deliveries to, I think it's the Palmer House Hilton, where the only way you can get a truck in that dock is like you got to kind of back down this really tight alley, and you pretty much have to pull in off like Michigan Avenue. It's a pain to get there, and if you pull in the alley the wrong way, you're pretty much screwed. You can't. There's nowhere to turn around. There's no way to turn around, and now you've got a semi in an alley trying to back out onto Michigan Avenue. Good luck. So I'm kind of curious if like what we could do in terms of just visualization to let someone know what they're walking into before they walk into it, and how much, like ultimately at scale, how much could that actually save? I don't know. Charlie, one of the things you talked about before the event was just the number of different parties who are involved. And like when you're shipping anything from here to there, when it's a shipper shipping from one spot to another, there's so many different parties involved. And I'm trying to figure out if there would be, even like remote collaboration tools, like what are the solutions that could help something like that?
Well, definitely the party collaboration is a problem in our industry, and it goes back to you're talking about how the NDAs and stuff. Sometimes the steamship line doesn't want to communicate all their information to the railroad, who doesn't want to communicate to the trucker, who doesn't want to communicate it all to the warehouse, who then to the final mile delivery person, truck. So you have like many parties, as well as you have a shipper and a consignee, and could be a producer. I do think that you could definitely benefit, because typically the way we would solve that problem right there is there'd be a note on that delivery receipt. So the driver would have to look at it, right? But as we know from pizza delivery drivers and everyone else in our neighborhoods and stuff, when you get there, they don't always read the directions, and they come and they didn't ring the doorbell or deliver it to the back door or knock on the alley or whatever else is, or Amazon drivers. It doesn't matter who it is. I do think that you could definitely, if the customer or the receiver was allowed to put that video and instructions in somewhere that someone could then check that specific that site, it could become valuable data, basically, for sure. And data is obviously, as you guys know, in the technology wise, it's huge. The last year, there are companies that are literally in business just for the data. They're not even trying to push their business. They just want to use the data.
I'm watching for arms. Okay. Caroline, you got any in the virtual space? Charlie, anything? Or you texting me?
I definitely have questions I can ask, but no, nothing here from our audience here.
All right, hang on. We've got a virtual question. What needs to be improved in the industry, you're saying? Okay. So I guess just in general in the logistics industry, what do you, obviously we talked about the issues right now with fraud and theft, but like we talked about that. You and I talked about that before the event. You could talk about it here if you'd like to. But ultimately, like, what do you see as sort of just some of the big problems right now in logistics, whether or not they're related to anything in terms of VR or AR, but like, what are the problems that need to be solved? Because ultimately, when tech geeks like myself hear that, we can usually find ways to try and solve them with technology.
Yeah, I think some of the biggest that our industries are seeing right now is that fraud and theft. It's been a huge I mean, it's been around the industry for years, but over the last probably 1 or 2, it's really taken a whole where we as an industry have had to really put ourselves together and really get on top of it. And using outside technology companies that are doing it, it's not the state or the federal levels that can keep up with these bad actors that are out there in our industry. So there are some sites that we use and can help to prevent that. And it's going to make sure that you're doing the hard work for it. Yeah, I think that would be an area. I think that there could be even more to do. But again, it's getting everybody on board. It's about getting the shipper who has this product that's putting it on this truck or in this possession and knowing that they need to do everything they can do than just besides load the truck. It's not as simple as, oh, let me just load the truck and then forget about the thing. They need to really take some ownership, I believe, where it's whether it's getting identification of the driver to make sure it's the driver who's doing it, whether it's putting their own tracking devices on their own product so that they can go and track that stuff. And maybe that's through the QR codes or whatever it is on the product. But I think that could be somewhere that the technology can fit because there are a few players dabbling in that arena, but it hasn't been solved yet. And it's still a major, major issue in our industry right now.
Where in the industry do you see like additional needs for talent development? So basically workers or training. Where are you short workers that you just can't get people now?
I would say inside the warehouses to do the physical labor. There are robots that are moving into the locust developments and some of these things that are taking some of that away, but you have many warehouses still using, physical labor to do the work. And until you bring the cost down of some of the technologies, specifically the robots, you're going to need physical labor that's going to be there because customers are going to want to be keeping that price down as best they can. So I would say that's the biggest. Truck drivers have always been the second biggest, I would say, in the industry. The goal is to go to autonomous at some point. I'm not sure it's going to get there as quick as everyone thinks. I do think it'll get there at some point, but I would say truck drivers would be the next one to go in and train, whether it be in the schools or in outside, things that you can provide to help them with their education.
All right.
I'd jump in there as well, just for a couple thoughts. There is one is I think like maintenance on the machines that you're using in a warehouse could be a good application for VR. If one of those machines goes down and then it takes 5 hours before that machine's working again, or 3 days. That's a calculated cost. You can say, well, if we were able to have somebody who knew how to fix it there right away, and that person was ready to go. And I hopefully, you do. And I'm not saying your company specifically. I'm just talking generally about companies with warehouses. Other ones you see in the news, and I would say this goes back to the manufacturing of the vehicles that do some of these deliveries. Sometimes you see some pretty high profile things where a train went off the rails. Why? What wasn't done there? What training should have been in place? How can we make sure something like that never happens again? Or in certain other vehicles where it seems to be down to either a procedure not being followed or something in the manufacturing floor that didn't occur that should have been done. I think those are good applications for this technology.
Well, so Peter, on that, actually, I was gonna ask you some of the specific ways that you're seeing the training. Again, obviously, you just spoke about a couple of them, but some of the other ways that you guys are actually delivering training right now in transportation and logistics.
Well, I'm going to talk about one that's, kind of, and again, that's just NDAs. But one example would be there are folks in transportation who are in large vehicles, and there's multiple people in these large vehicles. And what they use in a lot of cases are simulators. And simulators are a great way to train people. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're the one driving that vehicle. But you may have a job inside of it. And in those cases, the bottleneck becomes the simulator. They need to train people faster than they can get them through the simulator. The simulator is often a regulatory requirement, but what we found with VR, when you add that in, folks spend less time in the simulator. So what VR is really good at is helping you get the 101 of whatever you need to do. And you can do it, and you hit reset and you do it again. You hit reset, you do it again. You can do it over and over. It takes no time to set it back up or even jump to a step that you're having problems with. And then when they get that time in the simulator, often with real live trainers who are helping them do the job, they spend less time doing that one-on-one stuff and more time doing the finer points to make them actually better and competent at their job. And so they get to work faster and spend less time in that physical bottleneck of the simulator. That's one example.
Excellent. I'm going to see if there's any more questions. If not, we can actually end the conversations early and get back to demonstrations. So actually, I'll throw the question. I know, because I know, Peter, your platform produces a lot of data, again, enterprise data, in terms of the actual metrics around training and around performance. I'm curious, Charlie, from your perspective, how much are you guys using that to actually evaluate, the workers or their essentially their progress through training? Do your companies use like a learning management system and you're actually tracking your employees' training data, or is that, would that be more for like larger companies that are doing that? I'm not sure exactly where you are.
Yeah, I'm sure some of the larger ones are doing it. We typically will have, we'll use videos and things like that. And usually it's management and reporting and stuff, I would say. So no, yeah, we're not using any of that on with the way you're describing it.
Okay. And I will say one of the use cases, and this is a cost center that I know, it was made public, so I can talk about it. I wasn't really directly involved with it, but FedEx, one of their big bottlenecks in terms of timing was the actual amount of time it takes the person to load their truck at the distribution center, and basically making sure that things are loaded on the right shelves within those big box trucks that you guys see driving around. Because there's apparently a right way and a wrong way to load those, and you're sort of instructed on where to put things as you're literally scanning every single individual box. So they've developed VR training for it, which is apparently reducing the amount of time, reducing the errors, I guess, more so than reducing the amount of time it takes people to do the training, but in reducing the errors that ultimately makes them deliver faster. Because they're not losing boxes, and they were reducing the number of boxes that were missed. Just all of that, but it's one of those things that I don't know about you guys. I never really thought about the fact that, oh yeah, that's right, the FedEx driver actually has to go to the distribution center and load their truck before they come over to our place and deliver it. But that's one of those things, and ultimately when you start thinking about how many thousands of trucks there are at any given point on the road, at scale, that becomes a really big expense if every one of those drivers is taking an extra 5, 10, 15 minutes.
Hey, Matt, I actually have an example of that 100%. So my daughter's boyfriend is an electrical engineer, but he also works part-time, has been for years for FedEx. And his talents, he is one of the leaders around packing trucks. And he spends time training other people on how to pack their trucks. And he also makes something like, you can make 120 stops in a day. It's some crazy amount. So 100%, that's an area that I think is needed for this kind of training, because he ends up spending a lot of time helping people to understand how to pack their trucks, because it's everything. Every minute is meaningful. So I think what your point on that is 100%, and you could extrapolate that. We have in Portland, Maine, we have a port, and we have a large shipping company, and they load containers. Same thing, right? How quickly they can load and unload those containers is money. It costs money. So I think from a training perspective, that would be a very valuable use case.
I just jump in there as well, like for warehouse picking. So the folks in the warehouse getting what they need to put onto that truck or put into whatever container they need to. If they get the wrong package and put it in,
Right.
There's that whole, well, then it needs to get returned, then it
Yeah.
needs to get put back, and that reducing those types of incidents is a huge cost saver too.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So Andrew, I'm actually going to ask you to do me a favor. We got someone at the front door, and apparently my little remote unlocker is not working. So if you can actually go let them in, thank you. But with that, what's up? Oh, I have another question. All right, I think this one's going to go mostly for Peter. So how much crossover do you think there is between game development and these types of applications in terms of developing a simulator, or how many, like, I guess logistics simulator type games are there that are being produced?
Well, most of the VR sims that we do are in Unity or Unreal, and so most of the games that people play are often made in one of those two engines. So from the point of view of using a tool and being familiar with it, I think it's quite similar. I think the best training is the training that is the lets you simulate the procedure as much and as well as possible. So I would, you could do things where people will say you want to gamify something, but I think the most important thing is for someone to be able to be in the situation, feel like they're there, and get the reps doing the procedure that they're going to do in their job. And I wouldn't want to take away that, as long as that is the focus, and you're using your game development skills to make that environment look and be the way that it should for them to practice that important skill, then I think so. But I think that that's where I would leave it and say, great, you can put an environment together that looks nice, you can create interactions that feel realistic. But in terms of gameplay, I would tend to keep it out of it. That's my perspective, though.
All right, I'm actually going to throw a question at the audience a little bit just because I'm curious. Show of hands, how many of you are technology based? Like, how many people are you working right now in immersive technology? Would consider yourself a technologist, developer, or something like that? Raise them up high, Con. I got to be able to see them. All right, so for the rest of you, I guess, what industries, how many of you are from the actual logistics industry? Transportation, no, one. We got one in there, besides Charlie here. Okay. I'm curious what the rest of you do. I'll ask you afterwards. But with that said, give me a second. I'm going to, at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give our presenters a warning that you guys are going to have about 30 seconds, we'll say, to just give your closing statement about anything you want to say. Anything about your industry, anything about the technology, where you think things are going, just whatever you want to do. Obviously, I know Peter, you and Charlie probably want to connect after this, so I'll let you, we'll obviously connect the two of you. But I'm basically stalling to give our presenters 30 seconds to think about what they want to say, as we're going to move in to closing out, and we'll get back to doing some demonstrations and in-person networking. But with that said, what we're going to do, so each panelist is going to have about 30 seconds to give their closing remark. Caroline will be able to give her closing remarks. I'll give mine. We'll do some final housekeeping through the last couple of slides, and at that point, we will get back to in-person networking and some other things. Actually, I'll get to that on the housekeeping slides, but I think I've stalled enough, and at this point, I will let them go. And I'm going to put Charlie under the gun first. Go for it.
Oh, nice. Thanks, Matt. I just want to say thank you for having me here today. It's been a great experience and time. I think our industry, the transportation and logistics industry, is continuing needing of help in the technology space. I think we want to experience more of it. So keep creating ideas, create thinking new things. We are definitely one that are trying to take on more of that so that it can help us service the world. Basically, you saw it through the disruption of COVID, and now the people started paying attention to supply chain. Well, we need more and more of that help and more smart tech people in our industry. So thank you again, and I appreciate it.
All right, Peter.
Oh, you're muted.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll say thank you too. This has been great, and thank you for having me. I guess I would just a little food for thought. If you happen to be working somewhere And here are some ideas of procedures that might be good for VR. Like if you find it takes a long time to train someone on something new, VR might be something that could be helpful. If you find you have to fly someone to a specific location, train them, and then maybe even have to fly them back because they didn't have to use those skills right away, that's a great place for VR. So you won't have to pay for the plane tickets, hotels and the food and all that, and maybe they can do it quicker. We also find, especially in manufacturing and places where there's folks who really know what they're doing, and then folks who are new. The folks that are new will often ask that person who knows what they're doing, and so you're taking the person who's getting things done off their job to come and help. And if you can find ways for that one-on-one stuff to get into the new person's head faster, they're gonna maybe get finer points from that more experienced person, but won't need to take them off task as often. And then finally, like we've noticed as well, when you're growing and you've been training people in a particular way, and then all of a sudden you realize, wait, I got to bring more people in, and I just can't do it this way anymore. That's often a good spot for it too. So if any of those ring true to you and you're interested to know more, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk it through with you.
Thank you, Peter. Caroline.
I'm really interested to see where the industry goes with how we start adopting AI and how we form a relationship with being able to perhaps use AI for tasks that are rote that we have been doing for a long time. So as that relates to logistics and transportation, I do think that this idea of having a global view, a more comprehensive view of goods and services as they move through the supply chain is going to be interesting. I also think that we're at a weird time with figuring out what will global supply chain look like. And I think there's a lot of questions from a lot of people about what that will be. So I do think there's a lot of innovation that's going to happen next for it. And I'm excited to see how that all unfolds. Thanks.
Thank you, Caroline. All right, so I mean, for the two things I want to talk about, we talked a lot about the training that the logistics companies in particular could actually implement themselves in terms of like how they could use this, how they could use the technology. One of the things that I'm thinking about quite often is the training that can happen that's outside the logistics company that prepares people. So basically workforce development type training where, listen, there's a lot of jobs in the transportation and logistics industry. Charlie said this earlier, which I thought was great. I was hoping he's going to stand on stage, but I'll steal it from you now. Look around the room. There is not a single thing in this room that didn't get here by a truck, a train, a plane, a boat, every single thing. The chairs you're sitting on, the stage that I'm standing on, the screens, the projectors, the cameras, the ducts, the concrete, everything was transported in some way, shape, or form. This is not an industry that is ever going to go away. You can automate a lot of it. You cannot automate all of it. And as much as there's a lot of work that can be done within the industry, where the industry players can actually adopt the technology, there's also a lot of work that can be done before people get to that industry. Training that can be done in schools and technical centers. I remember we were talking about this earlier, that we were doing training a while back. I developed augmented reality training that was IDOT training for just how to do the inspection on a truck before it goes out. The day-to-day inspection of, okay, I got to take the truck out today. There's 15 things that I have to inspect before I get in the truck and turn it on. And the training was not just there to track the people actually doing the inspection, but also train them how to do it, or be there as a guide for any point where they were in there where they're like, I'm not entirely sure how I do this step. What do I do? So there's a lot of different aspects that can be supplied and supported here, and it can be done all along the chain of people before they ever get into the industry to prepare them for a job that they could then take, or once they're in the industry to actually skill up. That was the first thing I wanted to talk about, and I can't remember what the second one was, so I'll just leave it at that because that was a lot. But with that, thank you to our presenters. I'll let you step off the stage if you want to now. Peter can turn off your camera, or you can keep it on. It's up to you. And we're going to talk about a couple more things. But really quick, one of the things we want to talk about, so this has been basically discussing transportation, logistics, distribution industry. One of the things that we are doing right now, I'm throwing this QR code. This is a QR code to a survey, because what we are trying to figure out is what topics are you all interested in that you want us to actually, what industries do you want us to approach? We've got a list of about 21 that we're thinking about doing for next year. And this QR code that you're seeing there is a survey that allows you to basically rank them. We will ultimately do 9 industries throughout the year. Because in January we do a social event only, in July we do a social event only, and then in June usually, but at some point through the year we do the hands-on demo day where we don't do a stage presentation, so there's no industry picked. But if you would like to actually give us some input on what industries you want to see, like I said, we've got a list of about 20 of them there. We're ultimately going to select 9, so please rank them and help us choose what we do next year, because that's what we're going to do. We're still debating on what we're going to be doing next month for our January, because January is social event only. We believe we're probably going to be either going to Emporium or Headquarters. Has anyone ever heard of either of these places? One person there. So these are basically video game bars where you can go and play video games and drink and have fun. It's going to be a social event only. We went to an esports bar in July. We're probably going to go to a video game bar. So I was going to do a show of hands for Emporium or Headquarters. For the one person who knows them, which one? Emporium or Headquarters? We can't do the event in both spots. If you had to pick one, which one would you go to? Emporium. Okay. So thank you for that. But ultimately with that, the next thing is, oh, there we go. I didn't realize that was there. So we'll send out the announcement shortly about where it's going to be, and we'll post it on all of our socials. But with that, the last thing I'm going to say is ultimately, please take a look at our socials. If you're not following us, follow us so you can find out more about the stuff that's going on, and some that we do send other stuff out throughout the month on socials. We're going to start actually probably producing and promoting a lot more content on our socials in the next year. But with that, the other thing we'll say is helping us grow the audience will also help us grow the event, because our sponsors do look at what our traction is on social media. So if you are somebody who can't actually donate or chooses not to donate to us, just by following our socials and sharing our content out, that does actually help us get traction and get sponsors as well. So I'm going to leave this up and call this the end of the presentation. Thanks everybody for being here. And again, we do have food and drinks and some pretty cool demonstrations. We actually do have a demonstration of Motive's technology in the room. So Peter, who is presenting his technology, we have a demonstration in the headset over there. If you haven't tried it, please do. And we look forward to talking to you more and hopefully seeing you at the next event. Thank you very much.
And
Have a good
Matt,
night.
just one more
Yeah.
thing. One more thing, just to note that in our virtual space and frame, we have placed the link for that survey, the Slido survey, in the chat. So for those of you who are here, you go up to there and you click on chat and you'll see it there. So thank you for participating.
Excellent. Thank you. And Peter, I'll talk to you soon. And everyone else, have a great night. Thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And great to meet you.
I'm going to mute you guys in the physical room now.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah, it's great meeting you as well.
You too, you too. And yeah, definitely if you aren't familiar with the